Rapidly in orbit.
What if time bends more than we realize, and alien encounters aren't just cosmic, but deeply personal? In part 2 of our conversation with writer and podcaster Richard Hatem, we explore the strange intersections of free will, government secrecy, and cultural belief, with a spotlight on how media shapes our view of the unknown. We also talk about finding your muse, navigating the writing process, and how personal experience fuels the stories we tell. Because whether you're chasing answers in the sky or on the page, in the end, it's connection and shared humanity that might matter most. And now, onto our conversation with Richard Hatem. So Keel's work, it returns to the idea of things come in through time, maybe. And he explains it. I'd recommend people go read his books, but there's one phrase that keeps coming up when he talks to experiences, which is they say they were asked, what is your time cycle? By the beings kind of coming from, wherever they're coming from. So what is your time cycle? What do you think that means? Like when you read Keel, what does that set off in your head?
The time stuff is the scariest stuff. That to me is scarier than Bigfoot or ghosts. This notion that we don't understand time and that time does not necessarily, or we have a limited understanding. Because the minute you start talking about time anomalies, precognition, precognitive dreams, things like that, it immediately almost becomes physically repellent because it contradicts our notion of free will. If a person is able to have an accurate dream or prediction of a future event that does come to pass, where does our free will work in that? And then, because it's implying that, everything is sort of predetermined, and so now it's just a matter of getting a glimpse at what's coming next on the next page. And if everything's been predetermined, who is it being predetermined by? And all of these things really mess with certainly my, notions of autonomy, free will, or even sort of, human, supremacy upon the earth. It's like, maybe we're not. And of course, when people talk about their experiences with aliens, visitors, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, it certainly does imply that there are intelligences far above us that sometimes make their presence known. And very few people come away from those experiences feeling great. They use phrases like, that thing looked at me like I was food. Or, it looked upon me as we look upon insects, as something so far below it as to be inconsequential. And that, look, everyone knows I've got an ego, but we all do to a certain extent. We all almost need that to go through our lives and operate successfully and have a job and conduct relationships. If you spend too much time thinking about the fact that maybe we are cattle to another race of beings, that's not going to make your weekend go really great.
No, it'll keep you up at night. And I always think even the abductees who kind of come back and say, I had a great experience. Like Travis Walton being one of them, his experience wasn't too bad, all things considered, even though the movie of Fire in the Sky terrified me when I was channel surfing as a kid, but that wasn't an accurate movie. So, yeah. I was very relieved to find out it was better. But I often think, if they're so advanced that they're coming here doing X, Y, and Z and can change their appearances depending on who sees them and, what the cultural touchstones are, then there's every reason to think that they could just give me a drug that would make me feel positive about the experience and then put me back. I'm sure we do similar things to animals, right?
Yeah, I wish all the aliens did that. I wish, then it'd be great. you know? I mean, and I always compare it to the near-death experience where, overwhelmingly people come back from that feeling really good and like, oh, wow, I got a glimpse into what happens next and it's good. So you're good. Don't need to worry about dying. I mean, I don't want to be in pain, but, it's all going to work out in the end. So I prefer to listen to that. I mean, look, we are in control of so little. We're worldwide, I think, in an era of feeling fairly out of control of what is happening and how we're going to, sort of survive. And it's funny because we all grow up with a feeling like, well, once we're older and we become grown-ups, we'll determine the direction of, humanity. And it's going to be good. And I don't think very few people who get into their 60s and 70s and 80s, I think very few of them feel like, yep, we did it. We have arrived. It's awesome. And that's, why we get so upset when the kids walk on our lawns. It's like, God, can I control anything? And what I found useful nowadays is to really sort of, I kind of call it, I sort of bring my personal ceiling down a little bit. And I worry a little less about, okay, here's how I'm going to make sure the world works out before I die. Now I'm sort of like, well, let me just kind of focus on the people I know and the things I'm doing and trying to see if I can nail that a little bit and don't get so worked up. But it's tough now because we live in a world where we're getting transmissions from every spot on the earth 24 hours a day. I mean, you can use the internet to injure yourself all day and all night. And a lot of people do. And they feel that, well, no, I've got to keep up with events. But do you? Because what you're keeping up with actually are transmissions that are designed to provoke emotions in you. And typically the emotions of anger and fear, because that's what's going to get you to continue clicking and then ultimately buying something online, which is what the whole point is to sell you a thing. I teach a TV class at UCLA, and the students are always amazed when I explain to them, television has always been about the commercials. It's not about the shows. We think it's about the shows, but it isn't. It's a device to deliver advertising to you. And the shows are just there to get you from one bit of advertising to the next. And it's the same thing with all social media and all news, certainly. I mean, news isn't what it used to be. It's simply designed to keep you engaged long enough to eventually spend some money that will enrich someone else. And that's where we are right now. And no one's happy about it. No one's having a good time online. You have to really curate your experience carefully and then get out. Because seriously, and I've done that. I've backed off to a large extent. And guess what? My life is better.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of addiction for people. And I know that word is thrown around a lot, but I think it's true. It's designed to keep you going back. It's designed to give you those hits and to just wanting to be plugged in 24/7. And I don't think we were built for it either. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting.
Well, what I found is now that I've disengaged, it's okay. I wasn't controlling the world. And now I've accepted that.
I mean, that's good to know, isn't it?
Yeah, I've taken my hands off the wheel. I've fallen asleep at the wheel, and the car hasn't completely crashed yet. And I have a feeling that even if I was paying attention, it would not affect the trajectory of the car. And it doesn't matter anyway, because I'm still gonna die. And I couldn't be more excited.
That's great. Like darkly real, but really positive outcomes. What it was. You talking about advertising and kind of it selling a specific thing to kind of, pull you in. It makes me think of, when we were talking about Keel, one of Keel's theories was that the UFO phenomena was kind of it could be a class designed to kind of, pull you to the brink. And if you can handle it, you'll get the next step. And, I'd be disappointed if at the end of all those steps, they were just trying to tell me something, just from the whole planet. But I think it's an intriguing idea because, you mix in the time aspects with it that Keel wrote about. And we essentially have a situation where things from outside of our notion of time trying to make us a certain way. And I wonder if something like that could be a reason for the secrecy around UFOs that we kind of, see throughout history. Whether they have a UFO stored in a hangar or they just have a couple of videos of them. I think it's clear that the DoD don't play ball very well, or the Air Force don't play ball with transparency around these issues. And it kind of stokes these conspiracy theories. But it always gets me thinking, well, why would they keep it a secret? And to stop a certain future coming to pass that someone else was trying to draw them towards. Very Skynet, I guess. But I'm like, okay, that kind of gets scary. I could see why you don't want us to know that,
Well, I always feel that the most likely answer is that, when you're running something, you feel a certain responsibility. Like you fall into a role. Look, I'll cut to the chase. If you're a government and there are things going on that you cannot control, that does not give people confidence in you. So you have to imply that, oh, it's all under control. We know what we're doing. We know all about that. The things that are going on in other countries, we know all about it. Even if you're just talking about intelligence, just for other human beings on Earth, there's always been a sort of myth that our country and other countries' intelligence organizations have a structure that works and they really know what's going on. And that makes us feel better. It's like, oh, okay, so someone is out there and they know what's going on. And if something bad is coming, they'll be the first to know and they'll let our government know and then we'll be made safe. But then things happen all the time that our own intelligence never saw coming. The Berlin Wall coming down, no one saw it coming. There's a lot of, 9/11, they didn't see it coming. That's where you get the conspiracy theories, because it's like, but they must have seen it coming because I believe that narrative. I believe the narrative that someone knows what's going on. I don't, but somebody must, because Jesus, if they don't, then what the fuck? And that's where you begin going, well, oh, okay, here's what really happened. Of course they knew about it because they planned it. And then you start going down that road. And somehow for people, that's reassuring. Because it's like, well, I'd rather feel like the American government planned it because that still puts us in control of it. And they must have had their reasons. And we can come up with those too. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know what's coming in our own lives or in the life of the planet. And we're more or less moving our way through blindly. But again, and not to be grim, but ultimately the end for each one of us as individuals is very clear. And so in a way that makes it a lot easier. You know the people you know what you love, you know what you care about. So just deal with things on that level. The people who say they can talk to the other side certainly back up that theory. They're like, yeah, just deal with the people you know. Live your life. Interact with people, have emotional experiences, and then die. And then we'll show you what happened in your life review, and we'll talk about it, and then we'll send you back to Earth. Good luck.
So with, I guess we touched a little bit on disclosure, but I wanted to ask you, like, how closely do you follow UFO events in the news? Like, did you watch the UFO hearings that have just gone?
No. I'm aware of them, but I don't follow them.
Okay.
I don't, yeah.
It's okay. I always find it interesting to ask because I'll go to UFO conventions and mention the Tic Tac UFO, for example, and so many people at a UFO convention will say to me, "Well, what's the Tic Tac?" And then I'll tell them the story of David Fravor. But I think there's this sense in the community that if you know UFOs, you know all UFOs. And I don't think that's true. Some people casually kind of pay attention, like you were saying.
Well, some people like them aesthetically. They just like thinking about mysterious things, and that's great. I always assumed, I think that people who are consumed with notions of disclosure, they really do follow things very closely. And again, my assumption is that is the majority of people who are self-identified, interested in UFO people, that they're interested because they think that these are physical beings from physical planets in physical craft, and literally we're just hours away at any moment of having it burst forth into our collective material reality understanding of the way the world is. I mean, pretty soon we're just going to know. And I can see why people feel that way, because it's in line with what we've experienced as human beings in our own history. Groups go and impose themselves on other groups who may not be ready for it. And that we get, no matter what side you're on. But I have talked to people. I don't know if you heard that interview I did with Farah Erdozu, who wrote...
Yes, I did, yeah.
She was so great because she's like, really being interested in UFOs and, disclosure and all that stuff, that's kind of for rich white people. There's a lot of people in the world, women, who are their big worry is, how am I going to feed my children? Because, daddy took the high road, and I'm just trying to get through the end of the day and keep the kids alive. So I'm not really thinking about UFOs and government conspiracies. And it's so strange because you realize, oh, right. Like even in the world of the esoteric, we're getting a very Western American, and, you and I are getting a straight white man sort of view of things. Why are there, go to those UFO conventions and count the people of color. Ain't gonna be much. And then count the guys compared to the girls. And you're going to get a real view of who's into the UFO thing. Then go across the street to the witch convention and do the same experiment. And you're going to realize, oh, these are all culturally determined things. Certain people are more interested in certain things and certain ways into the esoteric. And that's still only right here in the big cities of America. I honestly don't know what's going on in Europe. Certainly don't know what's going on in Asia or South America, and the relationship that other cultures that are existing right now have toward the supernatural. And we've had the internet for 25, 30 years. Shouldn't we have a deep understanding of how people in Japan feel about UFOs? And yet I couldn't tell you.
That's such a good point. Like you said, it's kind of Western centric. And, I mentioned to you, I went to Colombia to make a UFO documentary, and we called them UFOs. The locals would call them ancestor lights. They saw them as the spirits of, people that had passed that they love coming back to see them. And it's that kind of, every place, every culture is going to have a different name and a different way of talking about these kind of anomalous events. And unless we line all those up and kind of go, oh, that description that you're saying there looks like what we call this, then we're working with an incomplete data pile, really. Yeah.
Yeah, there's these books by an author. Her name is Artie Sixkiller Clarke. And she's done extensive interviews with people of Native American descent in America and also Central America. And the way they talk about UFO experiences, for want of a better term, is very different. And it's like what you said. They feel much more that they're being visited by ancestors, which already then halfway makes it feel like they're talking about ghosts.
Sure.
But that's how they see it. And they're like, oh, these are the people who brought us here, and they have a whole understanding. And again, if you take a step backward from grasping for the final answer. And you just go, well, now, wait a second. Now, what does it feel like to think of it that way? You're familiar with the author, Joshua Cutchin, right?
Yes.
Well, what's great about his stuff is that he's looking at the same things we've always looked at, but he's looking at it from a very particular angle. It's just like, I'm going to talk about UFOs, but only in terms of the food or the other things they give people to eat during a close encounter. And then I'm going to do one about how UFOs smell. And then I'm going to do one about, and it's like, whoa, it's like by looking at it from just a very specific angle, it's like a kaleidoscope. It just turns everything. You're like, whoa, maybe the answer will be found there, or at least it gives you a new question to ask. And that's why I think his books are so fascinating. And that's why I'm so curious as to what people from other cultures, how they integrate this stuff into their lives, to what degree they're even interested in it. Because it's a human problem. We're all human beings on this planet. And anything we're dealing with, everyone's dealing with a version of it. So what do they make of it?
I love that. I think we could all do better being more open to the rest of the world when it comes to this. What you said about like listening to experience as well. Like I was reading a story from one of the archaeologists that kind of basically uncovered the big Maui statues on Easter Island that everyone kind of knows them for. Well, the peoples that put them in place, when they were asked like, oh, how did you move that from there to here? Because that's quite a distance and you don't have a wheel. They said, oh, the statues walk. And the archaeologists obviously laughed that off and kind of just went, of course they don't walk, they're statues. But they've since found that actually they would rock these statues back and forth using ropes, edging them forward one side at a time, where it kind of looked like they were walking. So the accurate description, though it sounds kind of dreamy, was actually the correct description. And we just kind of had to interpret it through how we see the world. And we were like, well, it's impossible for rocks to walk, so that doesn't make sense. So this really, age-old mystery that actually was solved very simply by listening to people who were local to these phenomena.
Yeah, it is funny how there's sometimes, well, you either look at traditional cultures as being, for want of a better word, dumber than us. And then it feels like, well, the only other alternative to that is, no, they were far advanced and, it's all been lost, in the island of Atlantis. But, all I care about personally is how good a time I am having at any given moment in the day. And then I think, well, there's been tremendous advances in medicine and technology and science over the last 200, 300 years. And, is it making me have more fun than if I was living in, the 1600s? And, yes, because those people might have had horrible diseases, or if they got injured, those injuries would be with them the rest of their lives. So their advances do make us enjoy the world more. But ultimately, do they? I mean, I could be happy going and seeing a Shakespeare play and then talking about that. There weren't podcasts back then, but you could sit in a pub and certainly people could throw their opinions around. People talk about going on vacation and it's like, well, what do you want to do? And it's like, oh my God, I'm in New York City and the traffic and the things, the noise. And I just want to go to Hawaii or go to the Caribbean and lie on a beach and just stare at the ocean and have a drink. And it's like, well, isn't that what people did in the past before there was
so
New
true.
York City? They were already doing it. They were already doing what we want to do. We want to go to a bed and breakfast in the woods and disconnect. And it's like, well, people were disconnected. That's what they did. They sat out on their porch at night and had some moonshine and told stories. And now we're just doing the same thing, except in a podcast. Dan, you talking about walking on the beach at night, staring at the ocean and the sky and listening to paranormal podcasts, storytelling, whatever it may be. And I think everyone who hears you talk about that thinks that sounds like heaven. And man, you could have done that 1,000 years ago, except instead of earbuds, there'd have to be, a shaman telling you a story.
That's really true. Yeah, when everything kind of gets stripped away, we all want the same things. So do you think, I mean, we've spoken about government and whether we trust government kind of with, the UFO secret or any secrets around the paranormal. So if they, for example, if you were the guy kind of solving the problem, like, we've just found out we've got aliens, how do we tell the world this? In this day and age, I feel like almost the president standing on a podium might not be enough for some people to convince them. So what would you need as a person to see an announcement like that and to go, okay, cool, that's the exact truth that we're getting there?
You bring up a great point. I don't know if I could. I don't know if something on that level could ever, it's so strange. They could say it. I could see something, but how do you know what you're seeing? And what is the reasoning being given? I mean, look, in America, we've gone over the falls. Things that were just assumed about our government and what we wanted from a politician have been so thoroughly thrown in a dumpster that there is no shared reality anymore. There just isn't. It's just in the moment, you're into this or you're into that. So what's going to happen? Okay, well, here we are. Here are the alien bodies. I think most of us would just sit back and absorb it like we do all news as entertainment. We just go, okay, well, I still have to go to work tomorrow and those UFOs are cool, but my wife just left me and I've got to figure out what to do about the kids. That's why it interests me so little. It's not only that I don't believe they have an answer, but you're right. I don't believe that any way of communicating their answer would be something that anyone could or even should believe, because so much of what we're receiving is being designed for a reason, and it's usually someone else's benefit, not ours.
Only a few more questions left for you now. So a standout event in paranormal history for you, what is that event?
Long silence.
That's all good.
Look, there's a bunch, but they're only significant because of the. Oh, okay, I'll give you one. I'll give you one. The Patterson-Gimlin film. Okay, here's why. Here's why I find it to be such a fun Rubik's Cube of a paranormal event. There are people who think it's a guy in a suit, but it's very, very difficult. In fact, no one has ever been able to go back and say, okay, in 1967, here was the state-of-the-art suit that was being used. Or can point to something in media, a movie or a TV show, where a suit like that was present and could be filmed in daylight outdoors for more than 2 seconds before you go, that's a guy in a suit. Anthropologists, zoologists have examined the film and said, it is not obvious to me that this is not a living creature of some sort. I don't know what it is, but I cannot point to you and definitively say, here's why it is fake. And frankly, the more people look at it, the harder it is for them to go, this is 100% faked. But at the same time, how could it possibly be real? What is that thing? Where are the others? Why did we get such good coverage of it? And over the past 50 years, the more technology we have to apply to that strip of film, it has not illuminated it at all. They've frozen the image. It's not like, oh, well, we finally have the technology to prove exactly why this is stupid and bullshit. And all the debunkers in the world are constantly going, oh, no, I know the guy who did that. And, the filmmaker John Landis apparently, oh, I know the guy who has the suit. But here's the thing. If it was a suit and that suit exists in real life, it feels like that's the shortest distance between us and an answer, and no one's ever shown us the suit. Everyone knows a guy. Just show us the fucking suit. Or even better, today, with our technology in 2025, recreate the film. And we still can't do it. So to me, that makes the Patterson-Gimlin film such a fun sort of problem to throw our brains at. And if you're really being honest about it, and you're not far on one side or far on the other, you realize that it has not sufficiently been explained. So I'll say the Patterson-Gimlin film.
That's a really good answer. And I love that one because you're spot on. My initial reaction to it was, well, if a video of Bigfoot existed, I would have heard about it before now, as that approach. And I was like, well, no, that's driven by ego and self-centeredness. Like, of course, that's not true. But then years later, I dived into it along with the Astonishing Legends kind of 6-part series I think they did on it, where they're talking to the guy who's collecting the original film strip so he can scan each individual frame. There are differences in all of these different film strips because of the chemical processing, even down to the fact that if you go now and Google this Patterson-Gimlin film, then you'll end up at kind of a recreation on YouTube where the software has uploaded so many frames for itself because the frame rate won't match that YouTube uses. You're not even watching probably a 60% real video. Most of those frames are going to be made up by the software, making it 24 frames per second instead of 15 or whatever it was in the camera they were using. So there's so much technical knowledge that goes behind being able to say, we don't know what it is. And that's an okay answer to give as well with paranormal stuff, to just say, I don't know, because many people no one knows as far as I can tell.
No. And we use the supernatural and we use the paranormal as a Rorschach to address questions of our own existence. I mean, these are all existential questions. And we are all, to one degree or another, preoccupied with not only what happens to us after we die, but why we're here at all. There really is no satisfying, even if you go completely materialist, there is no satisfying answer. If someone just says, no, there's no God, there is no creator, all of this is just a biological accident, matter floating through space. None of that answers how did the space get here and why?
I want that on a t-shirt. It's the ultimate question, right? How did space get here and why?
And ultimately it's like the line from Annie Hall when the child version of Woody Allen, his mother is bringing him to a psychologist, and she's like, he keeps asking these questions. It makes no sense. And the little kid Woody Allen is like, nothing matters. The earth is going to fly into the sun and be destroyed in 1 billion years. Nothing matters. And his mother is like, what business is that of yours? But it's so true. It's like, ultimately, what business is it of ours outside of fun late night conversations with people we care about, or even in the middle of the day like this one? It doesn't ultimately matter. We'll find out. We'll all find out.
If you had to recommend one book or film or TV show based on the paranormal or supernatural, and that could be the unusual things as well, what would you recommend?
I'd recommend Richard Hatem's Paranormal Bookshelf, the most fascinating podcast to come along in the last 1 year.
Nice. I like the plug. And I genuinely do recommend all the listeners of this go listen to Richard's podcast. Go on.
Well, look, I mean, yes, definitely listen to the podcast, but also obviously, I should give you a good answer. So the good, I'll give you a 2. I'll give you an older book, which is Siren Call of the Hungry Ghosts. I did an episode on Astonishing Legends with Scott and Forrest about that. I may do one of my own for my podcast coming up. It's a fun, fascinating book that brings up a lot of questions. Then it's unlike a lot of books I've ever read. So I would say check out the Siren Call of the Hungry Ghosts. That's one. And then for a newer book, one that I just read that I really ended up enjoying even more than I thought I would is Stanley Milford's book, The Paranormal Rangers. And it's about his work on the reservation in the Southwest, being part of a law enforcement unit that responds to claims of the paranormal, which in his community is taken very seriously. And it could be anything from Bigfoot to ghosts to poltergeists to UFOs. And that's another one of those books where he's like, look, I always held that this stuff could be real. But when I went on the job, I had experiences with each of these things that has convinced me that they are more real than I ever thought. I mean, this is a book that really pays off. And for a while you're like, well, okay, this, but in the second half of the book, it's like, oh, damn, he's having all kinds of experiences. So it's really, really fascinating. So I would definitely recommend that.
The 2 great recommendations. I haven't actually heard of the second one, but I smell a TV show potentially in his future as well.
Oh, hey, you never know.
Okay, so just to wrap up, we have some, I guess, listener questions, but they're not attributed to people. I just kind of said, hey, I'm talking to Richard. And they were like, who's Richard?
Oh,
and I said, Richard Gere, Mothman Prophecies. And
you're talking to Richard Gere? Great. Here's my question.
My mum had no clue until I said, the one with Richard Gere. She was like, oh, I remember that. Yeah, that was really scary. And I was expecting a romance.
Well, it's there. If you want it, it's there.
So one of them is, where can your ideas come from? And I guess this is getting towards, when you feel inspiration, where do you find it most?
Well, that's interesting because it's not necessarily where do the ideas come from, but what do you do to put yourself in a receptive place for those ideas? It's really difficult because it's difficult. It's different for every person. There are people, and I know them, other writers and artists who wake up every day just that there's not enough lifetimes to write all the books. And I am not that way. I have had like 3 ideas in my entire life. And everything else has just been, well, if I sort of add that to this, maybe I could sort of come up with something. So it's really difficult. But what I will say is this: if you're a creative person and you're trying to get into a creative practice, I can definitely recommend starting with a physical environment in which you can be uninterrupted. And in that physical environment, make it as conducive to what you love as you possibly can. Fill it with art, fill it with music, fill it with all of your favorite toys and things that make you feel like you, without judgment, books, everything. Create your little physical environment and then place yourself in that environment with the intention of doing creative work, not necessarily every day, but on a consistent schedule. If it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m, great. If it's 5 nights a week at midnight, fine. But make it regular, because what you'll do is by doing that, you almost like working out, you train your mind to access and allow creative thoughts to come through, which is basically your muse. But it's that quiet, timid part of your brain that doesn't feel safe necessarily, and that always feels beaten down by the other part of your brain that's going, that's a dumb idea. You'll never sell it. No one cares about you. This will never work. You're not good enough. Everyone's got that voice, especially when it comes time to try to express yourself creatively. But if you have a regular routine, you will find that that judgment voice will take some time off. And then the other voice, like a fox in the woods, will slowly come further and further out from the trees and engage with you in an open area. And that's your creativity, that's your muse, that's your soul, whatever you want to call it. And after a little while, it gets easier and easier. And then you can access that creative place, and you can, you'll be surprised at what happens.
Very, very poetically put. I love that. Thank you. And to kind of bolt onto that, what would be some of the best advice you could give writers or people to looking into breaking into writing, in the movie industry, TV industry, after you've, the creative bits happened, you've written your script, what would be the next best step that someone could take?
Okay. There are steps you can take. They're not, there's no, hey, we're the script, emporium. Send us your script and we'll get it to Hollywood. But go online. I'm going to speak to people who are writing TV pilots, okay, and feature films. That's because that's my area, and if that's the only area I have any familiarity with at all, go online and go to the various television networks and the various movie studios that you know of, and go to their websites and look for fellowships, internships, work, not really work study, but almost all of them offer a kind of outreach, which involves, hey, send us samples of your work. We will select 12 people a year and we'll put them into a program where we interact with them and we sort of help mentor and foster them along in their creative pursuits. Look up contests. I mean, the internet is a great resource for this because you can find it. It's fairly easy. You can do it in an hour. So internships, fellowships, contests, they're all out there. And most of them don't charge any money. I would, of course, say, try to be smart and don't spend money you don't have, but take advantage of that. And if you really want to be in that industry, I would also say it does help to be in Los Angeles and to go to screenings and meet people and have fun and meet the people who are interested in the things you're interested in. And you do that in public places where, the Writers Guild, when they're having screenings or events, and at various revival theaters or new theaters, and just take classes. You're going to meet people physically in those physical classes, like the ones that I teach. And those people will share with you their successes. And you're going to meet those people, and pretty soon you will find pathways forward. Inevitably, that's how it happens. It doesn't happen because Steven Spielberg just met you one day at a Burger King and said, you're going to be famous. Yeah, it's peers. It's your peers who are at your level, and you'll help each other, and you'll slowly matriculate upward in the field of your choice.
That's kind of nice as well, because it's kind of like the world, right? If you all help each other, you all end up in a better place. So
yeah. And I would say that nowadays, the young people coming up are much more about that. When I was coming up, I saw everybody as competition, and I was very wary of anyone. And that wasn't a great way to be. And even with that wariness, the only way I got ahead was ultimately the times that I did team up with people who are my age, who are my friends, and we found our way forward. So I have a lot of confidence in every new generation, because with all the challenges, great stuff is still out there, and it's happening every day. Cool movies in every genre, TV shows, and even YouTube content, when it's, there are creative people out there saying, here's my thing, and they're putting it out there. So there's ways to find it. Whether or not you become a multimillionaire, I don't know. But if you want to share your creative vision, there are ways now, and thank God, because there's great stuff now.
This one's from Elena. Are you going to do an episode of your show on the vertical plane?
Oh, is that a request? Here, let me write that down.
It might well be a request, yeah. Elena actually showed me the book, one of the first things we ever talked about. And I read the book and chewed through it very quickly because it's just an incredible story.
It's so great. It's so great. Yeah, I might. It's funny. I when I talked to Scott and Forrest, I'm like, well, I can't do this book because we talked about it. And I can't do that book because we talked about it. And Scott is like, you can still do it. Not everyone's heard that episode. Not everyone who's heard that episode doesn't want to hear another take on it. And your take is going to be different because your podcast is different. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. So I'm trying, in the first 3 or so seasons, maybe 4 seasons, I'm trying to do books no one's ever heard about, or a lot of people haven't heard about, or I've never talked about before. But I may come around because those are some of the best books. Siren Call of the Hungry Ghosts, The Vertical Plane. Those are fun ones. And so, yeah, that tell Elena there's a good chance Vertical Plane will find its way into Richard Hatem's paranormal bookshelf.
Awesome. She'll be very happy about that. Then this one's from me. My favorite episode of series 1 of your show was the Ted Sirios one. I'd never heard his story before, and I just thought it's such an incredible story that I don't know why it's not a movie yet. So I always envision it as like this kind of almost, oh brother, where art thou kind of vibe, just really over the top, really silly, but just kind of captures the beauty of the mystery in the world. And I want to see that from you.
Nothing gets studio executives more excited than when you bring up the movie "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Because the dollar signs just fill the sky. It's so funny. It would make a lovely movie. I've thought in various ways. Oh my God, even like a stage play could be amazing. And that could happen too. It's right now I'm super consumed with writing the podcast, and it's because it's written, it consumes a lot of my time. That is overwhelmingly the largest chunk of work I do, is getting those scripts right. And so I haven't really leaned into that, but it could happen. The Ted Sirios thing is amazing. I'm glad you like that episode. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it involves, James Randi in a way as well. So you kind of have these, It's the great battle between the believers and the skeptics, and just this unassuming person that's just encountered something strange in the middle of that. And I just thought, wow, what a great encapsulation of everything paranormal this would be.
Well, if you have Daniel Radcliffe's phone number, send it over. I think there's a little Ted Sirios in that guy.
Well, I'll have a look. I don't think I have his number in my phone, but I'll see. He's a fellow Daniel, so who knows? Maybe that'll be enough. If you had the keys to the world, what would you do first to try and unite humanity?
What?
Yeah, it's a big one.
How dare you? I don't know, man. I think we've been talking about it. I think the best thing that's going on in our modern world are things like this, the conversation that you and I are able to have because of technology, the way we connected, what happened for you and Elena because of that connection. There's with every new piece of technology, we're given opportunities, but we're also given responsibilities. And it always feels like it's a battle between how a new thing will get used. Will it get used to help a large number of people, or will it get co-opted and corrupted by a small amount of people? Here's the thing. And to get back to the political thing, it's so easy, especially in America right now, to feel that divide when you experience it through media. But, if I travel and I'm in a part of the country where odds are these people do not share my politics, I don't know that when I talk to them. When I talk to someone I meet on the street, or I meet in a bookstore, or I meet at a restaurant, I'm meeting a human being. And I think that if you deal with the human being in front of you, just the human being in front of you, you're going to have so much more luck than if you are trying to categorize them into a larger tribe, thereby to understand who you are in relationship to them. Deal with the human being in front of you. It can be scary. It can be strange. We don't want to deal with people, especially people we don't know. And yet, I think most people, those are the most rewarding experiences you have. Oh my God, we met the greatest bartender last night. It was so much fun talking to him. And because you're just dealing with the person, and underneath politics and tribes and races and gender and sexuality and everything else, it's a human being. And are they approaching you with kindness? And are you able for a few minutes to get excited about a shared interest? That may finally be the only thing that saves us. And it's not going to save us in large masses. It's going to save us one by one.
One last bit, just so we can have it at the end of the show, just tell people kind of like where they can find you, your web address, when they can see you at the festival.
The best way to find me is on any podcast platform, Richard Hatem's Paranormal Bookshelf, or you can go to richardhatemsparanormalbookshelf.com and find everywhere where you can listen to episodes. You can find the books that we talk about. You can contact me. All of our social media and our merch is there. You can buy mugs and t-shirts and tote bags, anything to make your book buying, reading, and collecting lives more fun. That's the best way to get in touch with me. And if you can, and Dan, you're right there. You're in Virginia. Come on down to the Point Pleasant Mothman Festival in September on the weekend of the 20th and the 21st. I will be there. I'll have merch. I will be doing some sort of presentation, I guess. I might even do a live podcast somewhere in the local environs. So it's going to be a fun weekend. If you can make it down in September to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Mothman Festival 2025, I will be there. We can all meet up in person and have some fun.
That sounds fantastic. And I'm totally going to put that in my calendar and see if we can't work that out, because that'd be great to meet you there in your first viewing.
Oh, that'd be
that'd be awesome. Yeah. Beers on me if I get to see you there, or cocktails on me, depending on, which you go for.
All right. I'll hold you to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Richard. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on my show, especially after you hosting Elena and I on yours. And I'll be sure to put the link to the show in
definitely.
the description and stuff like that, and just get people over to you for promo.
Oh, fun. Okay, that's so great. And Dan, it's always good to talk to you, man.
You too.
I feel so lucky we met up.
Thank you so much for joining us as we explored time, free will, and the mysteries of alien encounters. In a world shaped by secrecy, media, and diverse cultures, it's clear that personal experience and creative curiosity are key to navigating the unknown. Whether you're an aspiring writer or a lifelong seeker, remember, it's through connection and shared stories that we bridge divide and find meaning. Keep questioning, keep creating, and above all, stay curious. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Spotify or on your chosen platform. If you could like, share, or subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. It helps us find our tribe. If you'd like to support the show and get access to a 1-hour live chat each month and early ad-free access, you can find us at Patreon. Just follow the link in the show notes or at our website, tobehumanshow.com. And feel free to reach out via the contact page or email at hello@tobehumanshow.com. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, or X at tobehumanshow. As always, remember to be curious. The universe is bigger than we know.
What It Means to Be Human is a double-barrel production. This week's episode was produced by Roz Mugford and Dan Zetterstrom. Sound post-production by Parker Mosley with technical support from Dale Mugford. Our theme music is by Thunderbird.